In 1356, during the Battle of Poitiers, French knight Jean de Clermont grips his rein so tightly the leather cracks. Not from fear of English longbowmen, from the pain in his gut. 4 hours ago he drank a tankard of ale, and now his bladder is ready to burst. The armor presses down on his shoulders. 55 pounds of steel have become an iron prison. Removing the armor means certain death from English arrows. But enduring any longer is physically impossible. And then, King John raises his banner, the signal for the decisive attack. Put yourself in de Clermont's place. Your hands shake from pain, sweat floods your ears, and thousands of soldiers' lives depend on your command. What would you choose? Knightly honor or human necessity? What if I told you that the outcome of this battle was decided by exactly that? Another full bladder. Forget everything Hollywood has taught you about knights. Today we'll discuss a problem that tormented medieval warriors more than enemy swords. How the simplest physiological need turned steel-clad heroes into prisoners of their own bodies. I promise you 3 things. In 10 minutes you'll learn why knights invented adult diapers 600 years before the Japanese. How incontinence became a symbol of bravery, and why modern surgeons still use medieval technologies. Everyone thinks knights were invulnerable killing machines who could fight for days on end. In reality, a medieval warrior in full armor was a man in an iron sauna at 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and he had the same needs as you and I. Full plate armor weighed 44 to 88 pounds. Removal required 2 assistants and at least 30 minutes. In combat conditions, that was practically impossible. Imagine an astronaut who had to spend 12 hours in a spacesuit without a built-in toilet. That's exactly how medieval knights felt. How long can you go without using the bathroom? An hour? 2? Now at the stress of mortal combat, knight's armor wasn't protection. It was an iron box with a person inside. And that person needed to pee. By the end of this video I'll tell you about a knight who won a deadly duel precisely because of incontinence. But first, let's talk about how our ancestors tried to solve this delicate problem. Medieval engineers didn't sit idle. Over 500 years of warfare, they invented several ways to deal with what wasn't discussed in polite society. Method 1. The knight's hatch. They built a hinged flap in the rear of the armor. The design resembled a child's onesie, only made of steel and leather. The flap attached with 3 buckles and 2 locks, and fastening time was about 5 minutes, with Square's help. Picture the dialogue. Good Sir Guido, nature calls most urgently. Could you, perhaps, assist with my back flap? Heroic ballads somehow never mentioned this bit. But this solution had a fatal flaw. The flaps became weak points in the armor. Experienced enemies deliberately aimed for these spots. But there was another method. Knights stopped eating and drinking 6-8 hours before battle. Turns out medieval warriors invented intermittent fasting 600 years before fitness bloggers. But the goal wasn't weight loss, but avoiding accidents in their steel suits. But what happened when battle dragged on all day? When the enemy was in no hurry to attack, but the body met its demands. Then occurred what forever changed the concept of knightly honor. Ready for the most unpleasant fact in medieval history? Knights relieved themselves right in their armor. Yes, exactly like that. Right where they stood, sat in saddle or lay in ambush. Picture this scene. A magnificent knight on a black horse, cloak billowing in the wind, armor gleaming in sunlight. And beneath all that splendor, wet pants and the smell of urine. Urine in the enclosed space of iron armor created a greenhouse effect. Skin became inflamed, ulcers appeared. Expensive armor became rusting from the inside within a month of active use. The smell was so distinctive that experienced warrior could detect an approaching enemy squad from half a mile away. Now imagine these heroes' wives, waiting months for their husbands to return from campaign, then greeting this medieval romance in all its glory. But medieval society didn't just tolerate this, it encouraged it. Wedding yourself from fear back then was a compliment, the highest prize of a warrior. The logic was ironclad. If you soiled yourself in battle, you didn't flee at the first opportunity to fight a bush. And then the story becomes even more absurd. Turns out, weight pants even made it into heraldry. But if you think battlefield conditions were bad, imagine siege warfare. Knights trapped in castles for months, unable to remove armor due to constant threat of attack. The 1453 siege of Bordeaux lasted 127 days. By the end, defenders were more concerned with waste management than enemy cannons. Records show negotiations often stalled because negotiators couldn't stand the smell of their counterparts. Toilet diplomacy became a real tactical consideration. The siege of Carcassonne was reportedly lifted, not due to military pressure, but because the attacking commander couldn't bear another day of aromatic negotiations. The fact that incontinence became a symbol of courage is one of the most insane truths about the Middle Ages. Medieval heraldry featured a symbol called the damp line. It appeared on coats of arms of particularly distinguished knights. Guess what the dampness represented? Chronicles recorded, Sir Robert showed such a valor that he returned from the battlefield in wet garments. This wasn't mockery. This was the highest military honor at the time. The Archbishop of Canterbury, in a 1347 sermon, spoke a phrase that became legendary. Better the wet pants of a hero than the dry clothes of a coward. Medieval Ages was the only era in human history when incontinence equaled a medal for bravery. By the moment of the 14th century, modular armor appeared. Engineers developed a system of quick-release fasteners for the lower part of the armor. Emergency and dressing time reduced from half an hour to 3-4 minutes. Special levers allowed a knight to partially free himself even without assistance. By the way, these fasteners became the prototype of modern carabiners. Every time you clip on a backpack or a climbing harness, you're using medieval toilet technology. Portable plumbing was another innovation. Medieval knights invented first history adult diapers. That was a leather bag with a tube attached to the belt under the armor. Inside was straw soaked in animal fat for better absorption. All these inventions solved the technical problem, but created a new one, tactical. And here is where it gets really interesting. Tournaments presented a different challenge entirely. These were public spectacles, no room for accidents in front of noble ladies. Tournament armor was specifically designed with removable sections for quick access. But even this led to embarrassment. In 1389, Sir Geoffrey de Mornay famously lost a tournament, not to his opponent's skills, but because his emergency release mechanism jammed mid-joust. The crowd thought he was bowing in defeat. He was actually trying to prevent a very public accident. Tournament records show more knights withdrew due to equipment malfunction than actual injuries. So let's go back to our hero, Jean de Clermont. 1356, Battle of Poitiers. The decisive moment of the 100 Years' War. King John raises the royal standard. This is the signal for the final attack. De Clermont must lead the last reserve of French army into battle. But the pain in his stomach becomes unbearable. His hands shake, not from fear. Sweat floods his ears. One thought in his head, just hold on one more minute. Jean raises his sword, opens his mouth to give the command, and freezes for a second. Just 1 second. Pain pierces his belly like a dagger. The command sounds a split second too late. The formation fails to form properly. Knights attack in disarray. English longbowmen mow down the French cavalry like target practice. As a result, King John II ends up in English captivity. An enormous ransom bankrupts France. And 100 Years' War drags on for decades more, all because of one man's overfull bladder. And now, the promised rescue story. England, 1450, Battle of Agincourt. Sir Thomas Ellingham is surrounded by 5 French knights. Mud squelches under boots, swords gleam in morning mist. Thomas realizes this is the end. And then, from terror he has an accident, right in his armor. The French see wet stains on his armor, smell the odor, and panic. They decide the Englishman has plague or dysentery. Thomas doesn't understand what's happening, but seizes the conclusion. He escapes, survives, later founds a noble English house. His descendants display a golden drop on the family coat arms until the 19th century, never suspecting it was symbol of their great ancestors' reign. If you think the problem stayed in the past, you are wrong. NASA spent $50 million developing space toilets. Fighter pilots wear diapers on 12-hour flights. Surgeons use them during complex operations lasting 15 hours, and spare a thought for history's female warriors. Joan of Arc and others like her faced additional anatomical challenges in male-designed armor. Contemporary accounts described special leather undergarments and modified armor plates. Jean Squire recorded spending more time on ladies' necessities than weapon maintenance. Yet she managed to inspire an entire nation while wearing the medieval equivalent of full-body straitjacket. Many consider modern military weak compared to knights. Actually, we simply solved the problem that tormented warriors for 1,000 years. General Patton once said, An army moves at the speed of the slowest soldier, and the slowest soldier is the one who needs the toilet. Today we removed the history's armor and saw the most ordinary people beneath. They feared, suffered, found themselves in awful situations, just like us. Imagine the children asking his father, "Why do you smell so strange?" And he answers, "This is the scent of victory, son." Now you know what 91% of people don't. Will you now be able to watch Braveheart or Kingdom of Heaven without thinking about this problem? Like this video if your perception of knightly films has changed forever. See you in the next video. And remember, even history's greatest heroes were people just like us, with all their very human needs, in every sense of the word.